Hi, this is our real number two, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been part of the projections journey. You know, this year has really been spectacular with tremendous presenters. The audience has been so incredibly dedicated this year and all the years. This is actually finishing up our 10th year with now over 450 photographers presenting. So we're really, really thankful for everyone's support in that way. I want to thank Pro Photo Daily, American Photography, Photo Shelter, Epson, B&H for being there as well. We had a great year with photographers presenting really from all over the world at all different times in the middle of the night in some cases, with folks presenting from Ukraine. And I thank everyone for always being there for us. Um, and this is reel number two of highlights from 2025. And there's simply snippets from the interviews that we've done, and you could pick any number of selections from each presentation. But this was something that I just put together quickly so that you can get a flavor for what we're doing. Also, if you wanted to see the full interviews of any of these presentations, they're on our website, which is projectionsnyc.com, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is Projections NYC. I also want to thank the supporters, folks now who have the opportunity to become members and partners or donate to the website, and it helps tremendous with our overhead. So I thank you all for that. I also a shout out to Jay, who's been with me for all these years, who takes care of all of our tech issues. So a shout out to Jay. Also, we had a terrific live projections this year at the with the folks at Adorama, which was great. So here is reel number two of highlights for 2025. Again, thank you everyone for being supportive for us, and we look forward to a great 2026. In fact, we have a whole bunch of terrific photographers lined up already for that. So again, thanks so much, and we'll see you on the road.
We got to that park, this woman's house, she had lived there for years, and her family lives in the same park, had burnt down with all of the contents of her house. It were completely destroyed. And she was still warm. I mean, the embers, you could feel the embers and the heat still emanating from this house. And it took minutes for this house to go up in fire, and it was very, very sad. Um, but she was still warm, and she was very, very happy that she was going to still be able to live there. And the insurance company gave her $2,500 to buy a replacement home. And I assume she did. And she's probably still living there. She's lived there for a very, very long time with her family. But it was very sad to see this. But she was there, and she was present. She was happy to talk to us.
Guys could give firsthand accounts. What was it like to grow up in Mississippi? Where did the music come from? And of course, it came out of their life stories.
Mm.
And I became very friendly with Sam. And one day, I called the house and I was very friendly with his wife. And Doris said, Sam's going net fishing. And I just said, can I go? And then I ended up photographing Sam and his neighbor catching the fish. And here's just a moment. Sam was probably 70 or so and it was a hard job.
And these all these guys are, of course, self-taught, right? I mean, they just figured it out themselves.
Yeah. Or watching other people. His
Yeah.
father was a famous blues musician, Robert Nighthawk. Um, but learning from others. Here I was coming to visit Sam and Doris, and I parked my car. I'm walking up in the driveway. The scene is not staged. This was just, and Sam played the drums. Sam was known for his drum playing, but it was just a quiet moment. Sam playing with Andrew Shine Turner. Shine is still alive today. But this is just the scene as it unfolded, and the tip bucket was there. I didn't plan it there. Um, just a beautiful, quiet moment, and I wrote Sam's story for a living. Living Blues.
The greatest of nicknames.
What I was trying to do, I guess, is I started further back, and as you see some of the other work as we go further into the presentation, they are further back. But what I found is getting closer. I was able to really kind of get closer to their humanity and tell more of the story about who they are and kind of what I was feeling and what I was interested in. So unlike Margot's presentation, where she, got to know these people, have been going back for 30 years. I've been going back for 3 years. But the process that I would go in to shoot these pictures is I really wanted to sort of capture effectively how I saw them or how I met them. So this is 3 hours from London. I would have 4 hours to shoot and 3 hours to get back to London. And so within that 4 hour period, I would do on average 40 different portraits. So I would approach people. I was predominantly shooting, in my mind, for the Portrait of Britain. So this was Portrait of Britain is part of British Journal of Photography, and every year they pick 200 shortlists, 100 selected images to represent British society, a cross section of British society that year. And I had been shooting for Portrait of Humanity, which is the international, and that's what the Brooklyn work had won and got into that publication. And because I guess I trained in Britain, I've always sort of appreciated the style and the kind of craft of British photography. And so I really kind of looked up to this publication and this particular contest, really, or every year doing this. So what I would do is bring this book and talk to these individuals and present them to them, basically explain to them this is what I was doing, and if their picture was selected, it would be in the book. And this person here that we're looking at, her son was selected for the Portrait of Britain this year, and I'll get to that image. The problem is I'm meeting these people, and I'm getting their trust, and the mistake that I've made, thinking it's too much to ask to actually get them to sign a model release form, and I didn't get a model release form, and so they weren't able to actually exhibit my picture that won the Portrait of Britain this year. And so that, I guess
water right there and these burnt out homes, right?
And that's what I wanted to do. And then that's the bizarre
great.
thing. And this morning I photographed a relative, a distant relative of a person who died on this side of PCH. And that was really surprising that anybody would pass away on the beach side of PCH. But if I had lived there, I wouldn't have thought, oh, the fires aren't going to be able to jump over here. And
over the highway, right?
Over the highway, yeah. And also it was just sort of dirt, as you can see on the right side. So I might not have been, very smart about it. But the amount of destruction is immense. But look how somebody's already up there, and you see this all the way up and down PCH. They're getting in there, and getting electricity back up and running, and so I think there's a lot of positive takeaways, from that.
That's the same Buddha. Same Buddha. No.
Sorry?
Is that the same Buddha?
No, different Buddha, completely. A good thing to be in a fire is a Buddha. I see that because there's so many Buddhas, and I don't know, David, from your coverage, did you notice there were a lot of Buddhas around?
Yeah, I've got some Buddhas in my take also. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it is the west side of Los Angeles, so you're going to see some Buddhas.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't see too many in Altadena. That's a good point. That's excellent.
With any checkpoints in LA, once I showed my credentials, getting through, and there's a California law that basically permits the media, unless there's some extenuating circumstance, from being able to get in and cover these scenes. So I find that, obviously it's good for me, but I think it's just good for public information in general that we're able to go in and see these things. So as you can see, this is the same neighborhood. It's starting to get light. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot. Are there any questions?
No, you're fine. As soon as I have a question, you seem to answer it, David.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, again, the same neighborhood. It's, probably 10 o'clock in the morning or something. I see this guy walking down the street. Again, there's almost no one around. There are a couple of TV vans. You see a couple, three kind of random people walking around. So I went to this guy.
David, for you, is there any kind of similarities to, you covering, war zones and abandoned buildings and, like what's going on in Ukraine. Do you like as you're experiencing this, does something come flash back to you? This feels like, a burned out, neighborhood in Ukraine or anything else that you've, documented before?
In a sense, I mean, I think yeah, I mean it's a scene of tragedy, and when you see the scale of it, it's hard to take in, frankly. And I feel bad on a basic level when I see the scale of it, but it's almost so much to take in the moment that it doesn't impact me in a kind of an emotional way. But that will happen later, which I'll talk about as we sort of get into the more of the after.
Here, this is when I knew really how bad the fire was going to be when it was so windy that the embers were just lofting from house to house and just burning, home after home after home. I don't think any number of firefighters would have been able to stop this inferno. Sadly, I know there was issues with water and lack of it, but when you have a fire like this, there's really no stopping it.
And where is this?
This was down Palisades in Temescal Canyon. I got there and it was just, home after home after home. It was burning.
And can you feel the heat from these fires?
When I get close, I have, the face shield, and so I will have to wrap it around my face a little bit because it does get warm when you're closer. But like on the street, it's not too bad. You know, lofted embers down all the way down to the ocean. Here, I saw a hill on top with a mansion, and I went up to examine it because there are a lot of nice homes in the Palisades, and I thought it was very striking seeing the staircase here, framed within the window.
Mhm.
Yeah. Here, this is when I knew really how bad the fire was going to be when it was so windy that the embers were just lofting from house to house and just burning, home after home after home. I don't think any number of firefighters would have been able to stop this inferno. Sadly, I know there was issues with water and lack of it, but when you have a fire like this, there's really no stopping it.
And where is this?
This was down Palisades in Temescal Canyon. I got there and it was just, home after home after home. It was burning.
And can you feel the heat from these fires?
When I get close, I have, the face shield, and so I will have to wrap it around my face a little bit because it does get warm when you're closer. But like on the street, it's not too bad. You know.
And so you're there shooting. I mean, what's your sense of my environment, to be looking behind you to your sides so you don't get caught in the middle?
Sure. I like usually buddying up with another photographer. So we have two cars. If one breaks down, we're able to get out. I actually got a flat tire the second day, and so had to fix that. But situational awareness is super important. I've done CAL FIRE training for the media, and I'm always looking at escape routes, places to pull over. You always leave your car running in case there's not enough oxygen in the air to turn it back on, and also in case a firefighter has to move it, God forbid.
Yeah,
Like this,
that was what I was going to ask you. Like, what are the little nuances that we wouldn't know, like leaving the car on?
leaving
What other things do you learn to do?
Sure. Yeah, leaving the car running. I carry radios to be able to listen to the firefighters so that you can hear what they're talking about and where to go. Um,
And that's legal to do that?
yeah. You can even use your phone. There's apps like Broadcastify. There's Twitter, of course. And now one of the new apps, which is Watch Duty, is also very is excellent. And then they link to official updates as well as what they're hearing on the scanner, and then links to live feeds from cameras that are all like on top of mountain tops all over the state. Yeah. This is I think one of the more interesting photos from the Palisades. It happened just right after Christmas time, and so this is a Christmas tree just burning inside someone's home. And
Hmm.
the
So, Merrill, I mean, where do you find paisley wallpaper?
You know what? Just when it was anyone else here from Long Island? When I developed my film and made contacts and showed it to Cavalier, Wisconsin, Ketchum, he goes, "What is this?" I said, "What do you mean? What is these homes? This decoration? This like that?
Oh,
I said, this is where I come from. Everyone's home looks like this.
right. Mm.
It was just a style."
I am in love with these raccoons, especially Princess on top. I learned mercats are a gang of mischievous thugs who like to lay on top of sleeping ferrets. There is so much more to this story. Eventually I'll put these and the outtakes on my website. It felt fantastic to be a working photographer again on a big assignment. This helped my sanity and confidence and enabled me to go solo to Istanbul for my exhibition. I am thankful to the editors and curators who trust my eccentricity.
Do you speak to all these people? Do you get, any interviews? Like,
Yeah, the old newspaper and magazine training of going and talking to them and getting names and addresses and emails that I can send them pictures afterwards. Yeah, I want to have as much information about the people I'm photographing as possible.
right.
The thing. So it really took a while to make these pictures work, and Frank and I had a lot of discussions about it. He was not a fan of it, and in a way, I wasn't a big fan of it either yet. But I knew I was onto something. It's these things that you just can't explain, and I'm totally visually driven.
So, Stefan,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we had those early conversations, and I was totally, I was not enthusiastic about this project at all. But what happens for you as a project? You talk about I need a project. What happens to you that all of a sudden you get over that threshold and now it's got a life? And now I know it's really a good idea. Like, when does that happen for you?
It's almost physical,
Mm.
it just, you gotta shoot one or two or three, I always say six pictures that just work.
Mm.
I mean, there's good pictures and there's bad pictures, and nobody can explain why one is good and one is bad. I mean, it's just the picture has to have elements in it and the construction of it and a composition that makes people just stop, right? I mean, no matter what you want to tell, what you want to say or what the message is, if you're a visual artist or journalist, you got to make a picture stick. I mean, you got to make people stop and look at it, and then you can reveal the message. In photojournalism, it sometimes works the other way, but usually a picture has just to.
Of the fire.
Jay,
Evacuation.
how
Yeah.
how long after the fires did you get there?
They were not out yet. Officially, 100% containment was close. So it was, I don't remember exactly, but it was very soon. Not as soon as I was at Lahaina, but very soon. Evacuation from the path of the campfire was impossible for many who died. Lack of car ownership, age, disabilities, garage doors that failed due to power outages, and the incredible timescale of the fire contributed. The fire ignited at 6:31 a.m. Within an hour of the first evacuation order at 7:46 a.m., gridlock trapped hundreds in Paradise, 8 miles from the origin, only 90 minutes earlier. Flames entered Paradise at 7:59 a.m., and soon the blaze was hot enough to melt the tires and burst windows of evacuees' cars.
These are a couple of images from the Mammoth Lakes area in the Eastern Sierras. So Sedona was where this signature voice was born, but the Sierra Nevadas were where it really started to refine. So if you look at these two images, they were taken days apart. Same valley, almost the same vantage point, just slightly shifted by a couple of 100 yards, but very, very different conditions. If you look at the left image, This is all about flow. It's all about soft colors, graceful curves, tonal harmony. On the right, it's entirely different, right? This is colder light. It's a harder edge. There's a grit to it. I placed myself in that frame on the right, not to make the story about me. It had nothing to do with me. It was really more about offering scale to that perspective, to the solitude up high in that vantage point. So here the mood is the message. There's a dialogue between heat and cold, between shadow and twilight. And this is where the voice of that signature cinematic solitude, this is really where it began to evolve. Because I'm here bringing in light, not just for visibility, but to impart meaning. I'm bringing color, not just because it's beautiful, not just because it's sunset or twilight, but because I'm trying to add atmosphere. And the composition, not just for structure, but because I'm trying to tell a story. And the composition is really trying to tell that story. And so this is where I started to realize I'm not just taking photos for documentation. I'm actually making photos. I'm composing photos because I want you to come away with an emotion, a feeling tone. Maybe it's what I felt, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But I want you to feel something before you interpret, oh, he's up on a mountaintop in California. I don't want you to feel that. Beautiful sunset. I don't want you to feel that. I want you to feel hope. I want you to feel melancholy, maybe sadness, maybe anger. I don't know. But some emotion that I'm trying to impart. That's the goal of cinematic solitude.
So for you, it really depends so much on the viewer and the viewer's intellect and the viewer's desire to come with you on this journey.
Sure. Absolutely. No
Right? I
argument
mean,
there.
no, not for the argument, but that's really where we have to be in order to get there, right?
That's,
To get
that's
to get to
exactly
the
right.
space,
You're
to get to
absolutely
your
right.
space.
And I'll tell you something. That's a great point. I'll tell you something. Not everybody resonates. Just like if you walk into MoMA, not everyone's going to resonate with every painting, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you that some of these, like for example, these two images on social media, the image on the left did great. The image on the right, people were like, huh? I don't get it. But there's like a handful of people that'll send me private messages saying, hey, that was a beautiful image. I got this out of it. I got this out of it, and have this conversation with them that'll last for days. So the beauty of this type of fine art photography is not everybody gets it, but people who get it may not get what you're trying to intend, but they'll get something out of it, and you'll have a deep, rich conversation with those handful of people. And that's okay. That is totally okay. It's not about who gets the most likes on social media. It's the depth of conversation that I want to have with 3 people than the great photo from 500 people.
And Gus, when did you realize, or when did you know that you had to do something in regards to Katrina?
Immediately,
Immediately.
because I had it was twofold. I was working at a university as a public relations photographer. I was working at Southern University, and I was also expecting my son, and he's a Katrina baby. And me and my ex-wife, or my wife at the time, I left the city and came back, and she left the city. She ended up in, I think, Stafford, Texas, but she was desperately trying to get back to New Orleans because she wanted his birth certificate to have New Orleans on it and not Texas. And every time I got word she was in this place, I went there, and she had moved, and we eventually caught up with each other. But when my son was born, I wasn't in New Orleans, and it was about could have been up to 3 days after he was born. I knew immediately that I had to do some kind of special tribute project because there was so much destruction. And the very first project that I started was Tell My Feet I Made It Home. And it was my feet. I just kept photographing my feet because I said, I don't want to ever show my son the effects of this storm. That storm was terrible. I stayed. I never left. I tend to stay for storms because I want to be around firsthand. And soon as everything starts clearing up, I want to be there taking pictures. So I photographed my feet. It was a simple attempt to tell my story from the journey of my feet. And that's how I came up with the title, Tell My Feet I Made It Home. It's also the title of a song by a singer that I like named Vinx, Vinx. And the song, if I can remember right, it's Tell My Feet I Made It Home. If on a mountain I can stand and see and look beyond the roads where I've been. I think it says, it's an endless street. Now I'm hoping from where I am, could I believe what my heart knew all along? Tell my feet I made it home. So I kept playing that song over and over. It was that song and a song by a guy named Greg Osby. And you can, everyone that's listening to me right now, all of these songs are on YouTube. I don't get any money from it, but go and listen to it. It was
Okay.
Greg Osby, and the song was called Like So, Likeso. I fell in love with that song so much that it was my password for years. So it was, you know, and it was the song to me sounded like a baby being born. And when you listen to the song, he was playing a saxophone, and you can hear the arrival of the family at the hospital in the song. It's not a family, it's just notes that sound like people arriving, expecting something to happen. And it's high and it's low, and then it settles down when what I thought was the mother going into labor, and then after you hear the celebration of this sound through the saxophone. And so much of my time for Katrina was spent in isolation with my camera, listening to music, creating projects, because I knew at some point we were going to celebrate this. We were going to get past this because we always do in the city. This city is so resilient. No matter what happens, I think if they dropped a nuclear bomb on New Orleans, we're going to still return, and there's still going to be a second line. And if humans are not dancing, the ghosts and the spirits here are going to do it for us. I do believe that with all my heart.
Jordan, who's going to give us a quick overview of this new entity, this new group of photographers and what they're doing and how they're doing it. So, Jordan, it's all yours.
Thanks so much, Frank. And hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. So, my wife and I, Anna,
Hey.
8 years ago, Anna was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 37. And as you can imagine, it really changed the trajectory of our lives. And one of the issues I think we faced early on was just feeling isolated, feeling misunderstood, and not seeing our experience represented in what we were seeing in the world in terms of visual representation. And so we started documenting our own journey, and what we found along the way was that there were a lot of other people that feel that way too. And we released a book last year, and we decided to take that as an opportunity to also really launch what was our bigger dream, was this nonprofit called the Patient Caregiver Artist Coalition. And the mission of the organization is really to bring artists together with lived experience across different illness and different care situations, to essentially work as connectors, connecting communities of people that often don't connect with each other that really should. Healthcare providers, pharmaceutical reps, patients, caregivers, students. How can we bring all these people who obviously are connected to these issues together? I think that art is one of the greatest tools for that reason, and that's really what inspired us to create this nonprofit. Uh, it's inclusive. It's open to all. If there's people on this call or who will be watching the recording of this who want to get involved, who want to have their stories maybe featured, or want to do other things to help create opportunities and platforms for arts around lived experience of illness, please reach out to me directly. This is meant to be a community built by the community for the community.
So, Jordan, other photographers or illustrators or writers can contact you to join the coalition.
Absolutely. Or even I have board members who work in palliative care at Duke Health. I mean, you don't have to just be an artist. I mean,
Right. Okay.
I think the connecting tissue here is that you believe in the healing power of art and the power of art for activism to actually affect change and to help raise conversations that need to be had about how we can better support people who are experiencing illness and care.
You know what's sort of interesting is listening to you. It's all if and we I think people who take care of people who get sick, you start to go into a different role. Like now you're keeping your mother's artwork the way I would keep my son's artwork. I don't want to throw it out. It's special. It's this, it's this, it's that. And now you're doing the same thing with your mom,
Oh, absolutely.
right?
And
I
I
mean, it's
think
sort of interesting.
it is, for me, it is really interesting because I had a really tumultuous relationship with my mom growing up. I was like the rebel of the family. I grew up in the US, my mom grew up in Mexico City. And I felt even though my mom and I clashed a lot, and there was a lot of things that I don't think were right about the way my mom parented me, but my mom always loved me and took care of me and held me and like she just always really loved me, even though sometimes, parents don't love sometimes in the best way. And now I feel very protective over my mom. I feel
Mhm.
like I'm the only daughter and I am, with my two brothers and my father, and I'm always the person who's like advocating for
So
her
there
and
you
trying
have
to
it.
be
That's
there
our
for
real
her.
number one of
So
highlights
I can
for
100% see now
2025.
that like
Again, I thank
our roles
everyone
have
for
reversed. So
being part
it's
of our
a really
community
tricky and
and looking forward
complicated
to a great
situation.
2026. And did she
Um,
write the word you'll be music getting in notices that from us scribble that she had? As we move
She
along.
did
So
because
thank
she
you all
would
very
take
much. Be healthy and
random
happy
notes. I
for the
would find
coming
really
year.
weird things. Like, I think she would be like watching TV and she would write something down, or she was like reading a book and she would try to take notes. There's another picture where you'll see eventually where she was also like obsessively writing the family tree over and over and over
Mm,
again. And
yeah.
I think, I mean, my theory, obviously I can't ask my mom, but like my theory is that my mom was trying to use her brain. Like she knew something was happening to her, even though to us, to the family, she was always in denial. She was like, I don't need to go to a doctor. I'm totally fine. I'm just old. This is normal. But
Mm,
going through a lot of these notes, I'm realizing that like she knew something was wrong. And I think in her alone time, there was a reason why she would write, her kids' names, her husband, my father, like her husband's name, the day they were married, our birthdays over and over and over again. I also found like a recipe to a lemon pie and I have like 20 copies of it. So it's I
ah.
don't know, all of these things to me are like, in that moment didn't mean that much to me, but now a couple years later, I'm like, oh my God, all of this to me at least is making sense.
And as you're going through the project and you're shooting over time, is it giving you relief to document it so you're still using your craft as you're going through this illness? I mean, were you able to separate those two thoughts out?
Everything went really cleanly into compartments.
Mm,
I think at this point in time when I was using my iPhone, it felt like I was working full time. Oh, here is a picture of Carolyn Lazard's In Sickness and in Study, one of the early shots of it. Um, I was working full time, 9 to 5, and didn't have much time to make photographs outside of that structure. And so I really saw these monthly infusions as my predetermined time to make pictures.
mm,
And so it became for me this sort of clockwork where I did everything I had to do all month, and then I would go into the hospital not only to receive this medication that would keep me able to participate in the world in the way that I'm used to, but that would also be the time that I would make my pictures. Um, this photograph was made after my infusion by my husband when we were on the train. And after he made these pictures, it really sort of made me aware of something that then got put away in a in my pocket for later. Because in 2019, I had a child and I have all of these titles because like I don't really know what I'm calling this yet. Our
mm.
body is a clock, water for birds, not mosquitoes, goodbye High Street, and the passing measures. I sort of I throw all these titles around and I call this work all different things.
I found that sort of my springboard question was, what does it look like to accept this diagnosis? What does it feel like and look like for me to thrive with this illness? And I thought if I could visualize it, then maybe I could do a better job of living it.
In terms, did you immediately, once you got the diagnosis, say to yourself, I want to document this, my
No,
journey?
it's so funny. I was taking this wonderful workshop with Sandy Haber Fifield. She was teaching it on sort of a 9-month basis for about 20 years, and I took the workshop for a couple of years. And at one point I said to her, I just want to tell you that I have Parkinson's. It doesn't have anything to do with my work, but it might explain why I don't, finish things because I have to have other priorities of taking care of myself. So I think she planted that seed and in her mind, because she gave us an assignment the next fall. We would usually have a couple assignments in the fall and then just be working on projects all along. And so this project is actually the thing that sparked this her assignment sparked this project, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. First, I want to say that what I found, I would shoot like what I was attracted to and what felt meaningful to me as I moved through the world with this new perspective. And there were certain themes that I discovered I was shooting along. So the body is one. All the pictures are square. Then nature. Everyday items and moments in, vernacular life. That's the canopy bed canopy. And then I played with some toys. I put this gem on the keyboard, the I key of the keyboard. And to me, it represents how solipsistic it is sometimes when you have an illness and you just can't forget about it, because every time you move, you remember you move differently now. And Cuisenaire rods, I don't know if any of you know about those, but in kindergarten, it was a way to learn math, and they're integers of 10 cubes and all these different colors. And so I played with that. And then light, another category or theme. In the book, Becky Senf wrote an essay for me called Torrance York's Fabric of Light, which I was just so thrilled that she came up with that title, because I want this project to be more about hope than despair.
So the white gentleman is Colin. Was the one who founded International Mutual Aid with his wife, and then the woman is Jenny. She's the Norwegian nurse who was able to come out and help volunteer with her boyfriend Alfred. And so this is kind of a look at what the clinic has, and I think it's important to really talk about this one. This gentleman actually had bacterial meningitis. And so for non-medical people, bacterial meningitis is one of the most horrific things that you could really see or experience. There was, in this moment, if you can't tell by Colin's face, everyone thought this poor man was going to die. There was absolutely nothing that they could do. But, they did everything they could. They have this held together IV stand, and it's that big like metal rod in front of Jenny's face. It's like taped together, held together. It doesn't sit even. It sits like this the entire time. It's just barely hanging on for dear life. And then the only oxygen in the entire village is that one container in the back of the bed. And that's it. So that's all they have to work with, is these very like rudimentary, very simple things. There's not a CT scanner at the hospital. You can't get an MRI anywhere outside of the capital. I think this gentleman came in at one point and spent the entire night seizing and just actively trying to die from bacterial meningitis. And the entire team, so it was Alfred, Jenny, Colin and Jin spent the entire night staying awake trying to keep this man from dying. And he was brought in from a village in the surrounding area. So there's a bunch of smaller villages around that a lot of the patients will come to. And the family said if IMA was not there, they wouldn't have gone to any sort of medical treatment, and this man would have 100% died at home. And there's a very good chance as well that this was during Ramadan, and so bacterial meningitis is highly contagious. So if you're sharing food with someone, if you're sharing drinks with someone, you can contract bacterial meningitis and kill you from someone, which is why in the US, when I was in high school, there were all those ads that were scaring kids away from don't share your drinks or you could get bacterial meningitis and die. Because it's true. You can.
Up a little bit farther in time, just at our local park. This was our favorite place to go. And I moved a lot as a kid, and I didn't really have much of a community to kind of remind me of stuff of when I was a kid. So pictures have always kind of been my way of being able to kind of preserve having that community and those memories. And this is 3 of my kids and one of their friends on our front porch. They absolutely loved our front porch. We would spend hours on there.
So, Carly, I mean, you were always shooting, right? I mean, you're now shooting over 20 years, 25 years, whatever,
Yes.
right? That number. And, what has Teresa taught you that's new as it relates to as you continue to shoot?
One is that I didn't really know. Most of these are done in auto. I was really struggling with trying to break out into manual. And even though her class didn't center around teaching me that, it still gave me a lot of opportunities to really push myself to get outside of that. So I learned that. And then two, with the documentary, just being more kind of thoughtful. And that's a lot of the time I would take a lot of photos, but just kind of thinking more of intention of like, let's think before we keep clicking. And I just kind of just shot.
I mean, and you're working with so many different lights, different from last time.
Yeah.
So
So,
is that part discovery, part test? Like, what was the metamorphosis for that?
so when I was, initially just in my home, I kind of just sat and would watch the light move through the house. And then I started organizing, the sets around how the light moved through my house. So that was like an interesting exercise, I guess. And I was limited. I think I was doing this with a 50 mm lens, and I was in small spaces. So I was having to be creative in how I was able to put these together. So I'm taking multiple photos, and this one in particular, so because I'm so close, I was doing focus stacking and then also stitching, I don't know, 50 photos together. But I really liked how I got that fishbowl effect. And I thought that, really felt apt for kind of being trapped in a house during this time.
And the stitching was something you're comfortable with from the previous presentation, right? That's right up your alley.
Yeah, exactly.
And the cats are always, the first on the set, huh?
They're always on set. They're pretty funny. When I get on my tripod, they get all excited. They're like, yeah, what are we gonna go do?
Yeah.
But to bring in Marines, and I feel bad for these guys. They don't want to be there. A U.S. Marine uh, shouldn't be on the streets of LA. This is not an insurrection. This is not, it is so wrong and so unnecessary. Uh, and as I said, the whole protest was in a very small area of LA and really under control from local law enforcement. Uh, and so an issue's coming. And so, you could see that it really could have turned much uglier. There was enough firepower around to turn something worse, and people are going to start dying, or by the time this airs, I'm sure people already have. We had a shooting the other day because somebody attacked a a border patrol area, and so they had to respond with lethal force. I mean, that's a reality. But I think that in the not too distant future, if things continue to go this way, uh, we're going to have some really bad incidents. And I'm not a negative person. I tend to be very upbeat and positive. Uh, in a conversation with Mary Ellen Mark years ago, I said something about when she was talking about Streetwise. I said, "Oh, I hope Tiny's doing better." She goes, "Hope has nothing to do with it." It's like, ooh, Mary,
Yeah.
you knew Mary Ellen, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so, but she's very reality, sort of, like
Yeah.
let's see.
It is crazy when you see photographs like this, and you imagine this is like our streets. This isn't a third world country, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it is really where people know about, each protest that's coming.
I'm in a signal group with a number of photojournalists in the DC area. Not a large group, it's a small group, but it's sort of like supporting each other. If somebody hears about something, they'll, or it's like resources, to let each other know, that kind of thing, which is nice. It's collegiate, it's not like most I mean, there are a number of news outlets or wire services that employ photographers, and they of course share information among themselves. But if you're an independent like me, then you don't have natural colleagues that work for the same organization all trying to get. So technically we're all competitors, but it's collegiate. We're competitors, but it's not like I crowd you out, because I
Yeah.
took the picture.
And do you before you go, do you have a sense that this could get really become an angry crowd? I mean, do you think about that element? Are you wearing, a flak jacket? What do you do?
These the protests that are on these subjects are generally very mild. I mean, they're family friendly events, as you can see from the people here.
Right.
Appropriate to have a kid there. Though I'm
Nice.
not really worried. There are subjects that some of the Gaza ones, the pro Gaza, pro Palestinian, they can burn flags, deface monuments. Um, so those could be, and obviously, you know, going back, I know people during the Black Lives Matters demonstrations where somebody got a flash bang grenade or tear gas or something or other. But these are just good vibe kind of, everybody's on the same page. There's no point in getting violent. I don't think these people are thinking along those lines.
Like, for example, the previous image, you see a crowd and more or less gives you an idea, it's a newsworthy image of what was there. But then I try to hone in on individuals because it gives you kind of a closer taste of who's there, who showed up to this protest. One of them shows you the scale of it, and the other one shows you who's actually there, like that little boy, that Mexican man. So it's like anything. It's you work the scene. You're trying to find images that hopefully will communicate what happened clearly and as truthfully as possible. Hopefully.
And do you find it hard or difficult to leave your personal bias home before you go?
No, I'm kind of able to put that in a little box in my head
Yeah.
and kind of strive for it's like I said, it's like fishing. You know what you're photographing because that's the subject matter in front of you. Now the question is, how do you go about producing images that show what happened, that are aesthetically well made, well composed, well exposed, all the technical matter that goes into making the images that it checks those boxes. My biased point of view doesn't really come into the game, I think, because I photographed plenty of protests where I don't necessarily agree with the point of view of the people in front of me, but my job is to make the best images possible. And that's the job. I mean, that's just the job. What I think doesn't really matter. The images will let you know what was there. Hopefully, they will not be biased. That would be
Bethany, like when do you come to the thinking that the cemetery is not so much a graveyard, it's sort of like this information center. Like coming across Holt and this one and that one. I mean, that has to be sort of fascinating as you're discovering, as you're shooting.
That was not my focus, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
There are several large books that came out, one last year by Rizzoli, by a well-known photographer who I knew about the other books. There was another one by another documentary photographer. And I chose not to go that route. So I did not photograph the famous grave sites of Basquiat or Henry Holt or Pierpont. That was not, there are books that just document the history.
Okay.
So that's not the approach of my book at all. It's a poetic journey through the cemetery.
Right. I'm just saying that it becomes sort of a fascinating thing to do as you're documenting it in your style and with your vision. It's just sort of interesting that you come across all these wonderful
Yeah,
facts.
of
in your-
course.
that's what makes the presentation great. You have these little nuggets of information.
Well, I've been going there a while, so I've learned
Yeah.
a few things. And I'm also giving tours at this point if anyone's interested through Untapped New York. I can talk.
There have been a good few thousand people around the world who bought the work.
Thousand.
Yeah,
Wow.
a few
Few
thousand.
thousand. Wow.
And it's shocking to me. I never ever expected it, but I find it convincing to myself
That's got to,
of the power of her work to an average person. That people see something in her work, and a lot of people see it in a lot of different countries.
Right.
And yes, it's a story too, but they see something and they have to have a print.
And I mean, you don't need it, but it's got to be incredibly gratifying to you and to John. Like, we found this gem and we did it the right way, and
Yeah.
there is a huge audience for
Yeah.
this. So I mean, it's got to make you feel good that you recognized this, got it out in the right way, and
Well,
that's got to, like, when
yeah,
you put your head on the pillow, that's got to feel nice.
it does.
Yeah,
It
right.
does. I
It's a
mean,
beautiful thing.
I didn't do anything different than I would ordinarily do.
Right.
You know how it is. You don't think in retrospect when you're in the middle of doing things.
Right.
You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
try and do what's right. I try and do what's right all the way around. I have to
Yeah.
pay attention to the business. I have to pay attention to supporting, the 12 or 15 employees. I have to pay attention to working well with the person who's the source of the pictures, whether it's the
Right.
photographer or the estate or whatever.
Right.
And make the pictures look as good as I can do. And
Right.
also, if I believe in it, be able to sell it, quote, to the rest of the world.
Right. Yeah. And
So it's the same all the time. Yeah.
right. And when the prints are coming, do you give John input? It should be a little bit more contrasty, a little bit more this, less of that. Do you get into that space as far as the actual?
Well, fortunately, the printer, and it's the same printer since day one, um, is a guy I'd worked with for many, many years. And I had the feeling that, I mean, I know a lot of great printers, but I had the feeling, because of some other stuff that he had printed, that I thought it was the right paper, the right look, for bringing out her work. I mean, there was no way to know that, but it just, you go on feel sometimes, and it seemed correct. So we let Steve do the printing, and honestly, I don't think I ever corrected a print.
Is that right?
Yeah, he just kind of nailed it from my point of view. right from the beginning. You know, I didn't want it to go too contrasty, too extreme a print. I felt, based on what I had seen that she did, that wouldn't represent the work well. So the style is slightly softer on the, it's an Ilford matte paper, if you know it. And it's a nice kind of, it's not uh, fake warmth. It's not brown, but it's a warm gray. And if anything, on the low side in contrast. And always felt those prints looked good. And yeah, I've never corrected one of them. So.
They went to their garage and they fixed these cars up, and Paul drove them at this place called the Thompson Speedway in Connecticut. It was a little shit track. It still exists. It may even be a NASCAR. I don't know what that means, but may have NASCAR racing now. I don't know. But I found these pictures. They're 50 years old. I put them together in a book. I like the book. Again, it was a situation. I'm not sure they were great pictures in 1972 when I took them, but the quality of time passed.
And what kind of camera are you using, Henry?
Using good question. How many geeks are out there? This was a camera that was made by Rolleiflex, square twin lens camera, but it had only a wide angle lens. They were called Rolly wides. There were only 4,000 made in those days.
Rolly wide.
Rolly wide. There was also a Rolly telly that had a long lens, which was a portrait camera, and the wide version, fixed lens. That's all it had. It didn't have interchangeable lenses. So,
were you a camera geek also, Henry? And you're going into your parents' house. You're going in as a child.
Oh, what? No.
To see all the things that are left there.
Yes.
Right. And when does it click in that, wow, there's a treasure here and I need to document it?
You know, it was actually when I started finding letters that she had written me and never mailed. I thought, this kind of reiterates, I always had a difficult relationship with my mom. So it was kind of, there was real significance to finding these letters, thinking I need to explore my emotions and my feelings, and here's my chance.
And I don't know if it's okay.
Yeah.
Will you share some of the letters or what was in them?
You know, a lot of them my niece ripped out of my hands and wouldn't let me keep. But there are a few that she wrote me that were kind of defending herself. You know, she was, I think the biggest thing I walked away with from this experience was that because I had such a difficult relationship with her, I got to see what her issues actually were, and that they weren't about me, that they were more, that she was a very gifted museum, but really struggled with mental illness. And that came through by getting to look at these letters, her journals, and the things that she saved. It, you know, began to open up avenues of why is she saving this stuff.
And were you ready for that? Or did this really come from left field?
That's a really good question.
I mean,
you know, I don't know if you're ever really ready to lose a parent and to discover all this stuff. But it was really a healthy thing for me. You know, I think at this point in my life, I was probably 65 years old or something at that point. I was, you know, I knew that my parents were getting elderly and that I was going to lose them. But I never fully understood how I could come to terms with my childhood based on finding all this stuff.
So the door opens, you're in, and now you're in for the full ride.
And now I'm in for the full ride. So I start picking out objects, and I photographed them singly here. They were things that struck me that I thought could be important.
15, 20 years, I've been doing a lot more humanitarian, kind of social responsibility, that kind of photography. So my work tends to be like outside in places all the time. So my studio is basically kind of like wherever I am.
What made you transition?
You know, I mean, it's just, you know, I've always was a sort of a photographer that did many things. And it was a client, you know, said, hey, we got this opportunity. You want to go to Afghanistan to go photograph? Sure. So, and that's kind of how it started. But the struggle was, coming from a commercial background, was how do I present these people? How do I show them? How do I? And that was actually a big question for me. It was a real problem a little bit in the beginning, because you see, do I talk about their circumstances? Do I talk about like the poverty? Do I talk, where do I focus myself on? And I think it took me, a few assignments to really kind of figure out, because it's so easy to go to these places, in a lot of these developing countries or whatever, and you just see so much just stuff that's intense. So it's just, you take pictures of it because it's like, and unfortunately, negative emotions tend to be much more powerful than positive emotions. And I don't like that. I feel like it's unfair to the people that you're photographing, that you're showing them. I mean, you think about yourself. How would you like to be presented? Somebody comes out of nowhere and takes a picture of you. How would you like to be sort of shown? And I think that was my biggest thing, was constantly, how do I do right by these people? I want them to talk, kind of what Beth was saying in a lot of ways about, when someone's looking at this photograph of what I've done, I want them to talk to that person in some way. It's a conversation I'm having with them and they're having with them. We're all kind of talking at the same time. And this is the feeling I want to present. I want people to feel like this person has a story to tell and there's something interesting about them. Granted, yes, there was a point to my photography. It was really to talk about these people. I mean, were you in search of a photograph or were you in search of a person? And I think I started figuring out that really the conversation was really about the people. So in this situation, this is actually a good situation of how I really figured this out, because in the beginning it was kind of a struggle. And I spent the whole day wandering these villages with this NGO, and they were doing a story about gestational diabetes. It's a woman who's pregnant, they develop diabetes, and there's a program to help these women. So you spend the whole day just basically going from house to house, house to house, house to house. And I have to tell a story, but it's very specific what I have to talk about. I'm not a journalist in that sense. I am talking about something very specific for my clients and for whoever they're doing, whatever the message they want to say.
So basically what we would do, we would go build studios in all kinds of interesting situations. So the idea was, I wanted to go to where the people would actually be that I wanted to take pictures of. And the people are both civilians as well as Taliban. And so we were basically trying to find interesting areas where the people would be, where we could set up a studio and take kind of studio lit pictures. And so this was the first location. This took us, I think, 4 days to organize. It was a bit tricky. So this is a cow market. So there's a holiday for Muslims called Eid. And on Eid, they go buy either a cow or a sheep, and they sacrifice it and they give the meat to the poor. So that's basically the holiday. Now, in the major cities like Kabul, they have to go buy an animal because they don't have a farm. And so this was one of those markets. And so our thesis was, hey, everyone will be there. Rich people come to buy an animal, poor people come to buy an animal, farmers, right? Everyone's there. And so we went there. I rented a cow stall. So this was the stall that was supposed to be rented to a farmer to sell his cows. We rented one and we set up kind of this tent. And let me, wait, why does this keep up? And so this is the setup. That's Ramin, one of my fixers. And so, yeah, it's very simple setup. So background on 2 tripods, camera is a Fuji GFX 102, and everything was shot on the 80 millimeter lens at either f8 or at f11. And then, yeah, 1 light, 1 scrim, and my laptop tethered to the whole thing. So that was kind of the photography related setup. I had that chest just so people could sit on something. So I have some standing, some sitting shots. But that was really kind of the setup. And
anyway, so this is Kusatsu. This is the place where the water is insanely hot. Just unbelievable. And so this is a guy doing the timed bathing for his skin. And see how he's holding on to the sides, trying to not move at all? It is so insanely hot.
And how long can you stay in that one, Mark?
They're trying to, and they're timing it. They have a bath person standing near the person and timing it. I don't know if they're trying to stay up to 5 minutes, but it is cruel. It is beyond belief.
That'll clean your pores out, right?
Oh, for sure. Whether it works or not, I mean, it's been going on so long, could be. But here's the amazing thing is, right, you think about the conservative, Japanese culture, whatever, but this is in as public as you can be. And I purposely waited till a bus came by these guys completely just doing their own thing. I'm not telling them have a conversation or whatever, but I was very aware of the traffic on the bridge, and there was a car, but it was too low. But of course, it was great that a bus came by.
So there you have it. That's our highlight reel, our number two highlight reel for 2025. Again, I thank everyone. Again, the folks over at Pro Photo Daily, American Photography, Photo Shelter, Epson, and B&H. I thank all the supporters who have donated, who became members, who are partners with us now. We thank you for that. I thank all the presenters and the dedicated audience that's always there with us. So thank you all very much. Let's have a happy and a healthy and prosperous 2026. And we'll see you on the road. Thanks.